Good morning, America, and good evening, Slovenia. My name is Ana Maria, and I would like to welcome you all to today's already 8th webinar in the project Entrepreneurship in New Reality that is going to be devoted to the topic of artificial intelligence. Before we start, I would just like to check if you can all hear me well and see me well so that we can proceed on with the webinar. So please somebody just write in the chat so that I know that everything is working as it should be. Okay, thank you so much. And now, of course, we can move on. So firstly, I would like to give my thanks to all our guest panelists today, to our moderator, and of course, to all of you who are interested to listen to what is artificial intelligence bringing in terms of threats or opportunities. So it's definitely going to be an interesting webinar. Of course, for all of you who are here with us today for the first time and who have not been on the previous webinars, just a short introduction as to what entrepreneurship in new reality webinars are actually about. So the ENR, as we call it shortly, are a series of webinars that are covering actual topics in these times of new reality. We have brought together more than 30 guests coming from both United States and Slovenia to share their professional know-how, ideas, and perspective so that we can connect on the both sides of the ocean. The ENR project was created by GEA College, a faculty of entrepreneurship, who has been educating entrepreneurs as a modern business center for more than 30 years right now. And of course, this project would not be in existence if there wouldn't be our international and national partners. So we would like to give our sincere thanks to US Embassy here in Ljubljana, who is supporting these webinars, and all our national and international partners. So without further ado, I hope that in today's webinar, which is already 8 in this series, you will get a lot of new ideas and new knowledge in this interesting field of artificial intelligence. And I hope that you will be able to grow both as entrepreneurs and as individuals in this new reality. So now it is the time to present our moderator for today. We have Mr. Jure Trilar joining us from 4P DIG, or Digital Innovation Hub, and Laboratory for Telecommunications. Jure is a researcher and EU project manager at Faculty of Engineering at University of Ljubljana, a publisher and also a lecturer, and has a great interest and passion for the artificial intelligence. So Jure, it is a great privilege to have you here. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna Maria. So can you hear me well? Is everything okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, and of course, dear business leaders of the future, welcome to GEA College Artificial Intelligence Opportunity or Threat webinar. And today we will discover the potential of artificial intelligence for developing ideas, connecting, and growing your business. We will learn what is still needed to be done for SMEs, for small and medium-sized companies, to integrate AI into their business model. We should also learn how AI can improve our lives and businesses, and also learn about the future jobs that will arise with the emergence of this technology. And of course, we should focus also on the available initiatives that are helping AI business grow both in Europe and US. Just a reminder, you can use the chat for questions and answers, and we will answer them in the Q&A section at the end of this webinar. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our panelists. And I'm very proud to be in such an esteemed company today. And so today's panelists are Mr. Shlomo Engelson Argamon, who is a chair of the Department of Computer Science, a professor of computer science, and the director of the Masters of Data Science program at Illinois Tech, and the chief scientist at TAIA Global International. And following, it's Dr. Marko Grobelnik, who co-leads the Artificial Intelligence Laboratory at the Jozef Stefan Institute. He has co-founded UNESCO International Research Center on AI, IRCAI. You will hear more about it later. and is CEO of quintintelligence.com, specialized in solving complex tasks for the commercial world. And with us also today is Bojan Cestnik, associate professor from GEA College from Slovenia. He's managing director of Temida software company and the researcher in the Department of Knowledge Technologies at Jozef Stefan Institute in Ljubljana. And that concludes our short introduction of the panelists. You will hear more about them just in a few minutes. For now, I would like to make some introduction about the AI and the perception of the AI in public discourse. And there is a sort of duality in public discourse when it comes to describing the AI. On one hand, there is a grand futuristic vision of omnipotent AI that solves the problems of its creators and possibly causes positive or negative externalities for others. And on the other hand, we have isolated somehow narrow use cases and demonstrations of what can AI do today. And sometimes we cannot really use those in everyday lives. Well, to address directly on how this impacts the capacity of entrepreneurs and leaders to achieve their goals, in this webinar we will build understanding of AI from ground up, connect the concepts, use the use cases that are available to entrepreneurs today, with assessment of greater societal impacts or challenges that are envisaged for the future living and working with the AI. And to start with, to get some traction on the whole, sometimes quite non-fungible AI concept, we need to understand there are different degrees of AI that span from automation, popular pattern recognition methods, for example, convolutional neural networks and other clever statistical, semantic, or syntactic approaches, supported by greater data processing capabilities that most of you are already familiar with. And on the other end of the spectrum, to ever eluding true machine self-awareness envisaged in science fiction novels and movies and so on. Specifically, what we're talking about, we have this on the, let's say, on the lower levels are these reactive algorithms. Think of IBM's Deep Blue beating Garry Kasparov in 1997. And next, the next level of, let's say, AI are the algorithms that use limited memory. Think about chatbots and self-driving vehicles. Further along on this technology development line, there are algorithms with capabilities of understanding humans that are intended for interactions. Everything up till now we usually call machine learning, and it entails AI. The kind of broad spectrum intelligence is not available in machines yet. That usually describes the self-aware machines that are aware on different levels, usually described as artificial narrow intelligence to support specific tasks, artificial general intelligence, and artificial super intelligence, which is quite kind of hard to imagine, especially with the replicability capacities and other features. Today, the AI is often showcased in some neat prototypes and applications to demonstrate the potential value it can have for businesses or society. And let's look at the examples. Play written by an artificial intelligence program was presented in Prague just early this year. And one AI algorithm taught itself to play 49 classic Atari games. Of course, we all know that AI is used for social media monitoring, and all sorts of Internet of Things devices connected to the cloud are supported by AI. Think about, I don't know, Nest smart thermostats and so forth. Of course, Siri, Alexa, Netflix, all sorts of recommendation AI engines are part of our everyday lives. Though AI may be closer than ever to our lives, but how well do business people understand it? I need now the help of our panelists to explain more on this topic. So who should go first? So to repeat the question, how well do business people understand AI today? So Shlomo, Bojan, and Marko, what are your thoughts about this?
Maybe I can start, right? So how business people understand, I think is the whole spectrum, right? So it's not something that all the business people would be the same, right? But generally, my impression is that business people understand, so at least on a higher level of positions, they understand less than they should, right? Because this change from, let's say, less or non-AI times into this AI times, which are maybe these days already here, happened fairly fast as compared to, let's say, maybe some other changes, right? And it's not that complicated to understand AI itself. What are possible solutions? It's more like complicated to understand the consequences and all the opportunities, right? AI at the end is a set of tools, right? Set of solutions for problems which were not easy to solve or were unsolvable before, right? Or not automatable, at least, right? Now we have many of these things automatable, and this has is the whole field of possible innovations and opportunities. And this is where the business people have, I think, still problems to understand. This is one point. And the second point is also that there's a lack of this proper AI people on the market. So it's high demand of it. And if you want to do something, right, in the line of automation or including AI, right? So you need proper people as well. Although these tools are all mostly available, right? It's the knowledge is really of what's lacking on the market at the moment, right?
No, I think that's absolutely correct, Marko. The rapid shift and the rapid development of these new tools and these new techniques with great power has led to a situation in which there are many tools that are available, which people simply don't understand and don't know what they can do usefully for them in business and need that experience. One other factor, however, I think, is that there's a great deal of hype. There's a great deal of overblown claims of the effectiveness of tools for this, that, or the other. And so it creates a great deal of noise and confusion in terms of what can AI actually do versus what is it claimed that it can do. And that can also lead to a lot of disillusionment and skepticism when business people try AI solutions without, quite reasonably, the understanding of what they actually can do, and they don't work for them. So as you say, we need more AI experts out there working with and for businesses to help guide them and to help develop these programs.
Okay, maybe I should add that in business, the first requirement is that you should know your business. The second one is that you should know your customer. And most of business people are aware that of these two requirements. And the field they are using, although modestly and moderately, is called business analytics or business intelligence. So it's a part of artificial intelligence. But as far as I know, they are aware of that. But the research from Gartner Group showed that 87% of businesses use it with low profile, low maturity, without full extent. So there seems to be just the idea that I should be in the company of those, but I will not use it to the full power. And so this is just the basic usage, just to be here. This is probably built on top of ERP systems in order to produce some KPIs and look at those, but they are not fully aware what they can benefit from it. And there are many reasons why they don't use it to the full awareness. I will not go into detail, but what seems quite promising is that there is envisaged like 7.3% annual growth of the usage. So the field will obviously benefit, and we will come to some sort of maturity of the field, and probably at least the biggest, the most important companies will be very well aware of competitive advantage of that field.
Okay.
And maybe just one point related to the talent which is on the market, right? So I really liked that analysis coming from White House sometime last year, where they said, okay, so if we want to get the proper talent, right? So we should rethink how to let's say qualify them, right? So because often these are people which are good experts, but maybe they didn't go through formal education and maybe they're not dressed as they should be and so on. But these are the most valuable one, right? So this was one of this AI White House documents, which was actually pointing out this unusual nature of the experts as well in the field, just as a curiosity, right?
Interesting observation. And of course, with many tools available, and like you mentioned, the competence and skills shortage, it would be very hard to integrate AI across all domains of people's lives at the very beginning, at this stage. And this change, the introduction of AI and the impacts are gradually spreading across different sectors, presumably faster in more digitalized sectors. But what is your favorite, or can every panelist describe one or two use cases that have the most disruptive potential? What's your personal preference regarding that?
I would say, for instance, one application, which is type of applications, right? So is digital twins of, let's say, factories, right? So this is something which goes beyond capability of individual person, right? So as long as we talk about computer vision, I don't know, speech recognition, translation, this is something which people can do, right? But as soon as you reach go across certain level of complexity, and digital twins for, let's say, factories or other complex systems, when you apply them, then obviously these kind of systems definitely go beyond, right? This would be an example, right? But there could be more. Maybe Bojan, Shlomo, if you would have some examples.
Well, maybe. Okay, go ahead, Shlomo.
Well, I was just going to say that you know the idea of complexity, I think, is the key issue there. And another area where which is somewhat underexplored and underunderstood, but I think there's tremendous disruptive capability there, is in supply chain logistics. When you're looking at very complex supply lines, and right now a lot of the focus has been, for understandable reasons, on efficiency. But we're learning that efficiency comes at a cost of resilience. And looking, that's a place where the capacity and complexity management capabilities of advanced artificial intelligence could have truly disruptive impact.
Okay, maybe I agree completely, because I wanted to stress out the transport. Driving of people and goods. And actually a late friend of mine, Franci Baloch, wrote a book, Breakthrough, Driving Through the Changes of Generations. He's a self-made man. He was a self-made man, so to say. But what struck me the most is that Google actually bought one of the chapters of his book not to be published, so just to be stored for later purposes, which was quite interesting on that behalf. And apart from transport, which will obviously be changed be affected in various ways, I would say that also social media privacy invasion and these deep fakes scenarios and so on, which were already mentioned during the discussion. But I think that will also be a disruptive scenario in one way or another.
Maybe I could add one more technology, which is also related to complexity, but in other direction, which is upcoming. It's still not there, but will be big disruption. I think it's common sense reasoning, right? So at the moment, computers cannot read and understand. They can read text, but they cannot understand the text as people do, right? So, but it's pretty decent investment in US and elsewhere, right, in this kind of technology. So, and we can expect maybe in down the line, like 5-10 years, that computers will be able to capture knowledge from where people stored the knowledge, right? So the texts, right? So once this will happen, this will be also big disruption, right? Because suddenly, many people act today just as a sensors, right? And simple reasoners, right? To translate from unstructured data into some kind of structured form where computers take over. This will be a breach across this bit, and so this is one thing which I expect somehow will be important for the future, right?
Well, quite interesting, and learning from these examples should educate us on how to go on about our businesses with artificial intelligence. Could you please explain what steps need to be taken before we fully integrate it into our businesses? To rephrase, what infrastructure is needed to integrate AI into businesses? Is it hardware, or please elaborate?
Well, I would actually suggest that before one thinks about what infrastructure, both in terms of manpower as well as in terms of hardware, because those are both very important, as we've discussed, the first question that a business leader should ask is, why do I want to use AI? For what purpose? And is AI the right solution for my problem? Because it isn't always. And I think that on the one hand, we have people in business who could use AI that don't know what the tools are available and are not using it where they could use it. But we also have many businesses who are investing in AI and building AI groups without a clear picture of what they're trying to accomplish. And the first step really is know what you're trying to do. And depending on what you're trying to do, you may need different levels of infrastructure. You may want to have it in-house. You may want to better outsource it initially, use consultants. That I believe is the first question that should be asked.
Well, maybe I should stress that in data mining, we have a certain methodology which is called CRISP-DM,
yes.
Which is nicely fitted for data mining, but I believe that also for other approaches when dealing with the artificial intelligence algorithms or technology. And there are like 6 stages, and one is exactly like Shlomo suggested, business understanding. First, you have to determine your business goals. Without that, it is just a larkpullertism or showing off in front of somebody else. And then after business understanding, so that you know what are the outputs, you assess the current situation, you have to consider data understanding. So you have to know either what kind of data you have, what do you lack, what is the quality, what are the biases in your data, and so on. And then you come to data preparation. After data preparation comes modeling, evaluation, and deployment. So this is a general infrastructure which is a cycle, I might say. So you don't stop there, but you repeat in a cycle. It's like Deming cycle, plan, do, check, act, or something like that. But this is, in my view, just one methodology that the business should consider when adopting AI.
Maybe if I just add to, I totally agree, but to be very practical, right? So what do you need, right? Today, it's really interesting time, in a way you need credit cards, and you buy in a second large portion of CPU power and disk storage, right, on clouds, right? So, okay, you have this. Then most of the tools are free, like, I don't know, Google TensorFlow and all these fancy tools, which from big tech, right? This is pretty much for free, right? And you need data, right? Data which hopefully includes the signals for the solutions you want to make, like for this business understanding. So it's interesting somehow that really most of the tools are free today. Almost providers are competing who will provide more for free, right? This was never before that I would remember, right? And then of course, the technical part now, not the business. The technical part is just to understand what kind of tools, what kind of building blocks actually you operate with. And in principle, this is not very complicated. So, high school students can do this, right? So with a little bit of maybe watching maybe a few hours of YouTube videos, you can do a lot, right? So it's very simple if you really want, right, to do something.
Well, that's a good point. But regarding the free tools that are available, there's still the demand and the lack of competence and skills, and that is our next section focusing on. And well, just to open it, open the discussion. If you're familiar with the short story of Mana, it's by Marshall Brain. It illustrates relatively trivial replacement of middle management with allowing AI algorithm to lead and optimize the processes in the imaginary fast food franchise. And people tend to think that machines will replace physical labor as historically the machines have replaced physical labor before. But it turns out that it's easier to replace people's brain with effective AI processing than their bodies with robots. And especially if we allow these algorithms to give orders and to give them control regarding our work. And of course, this is the question everybody's asking about. Will AI be able to take your job, our job? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that definitely it will take a few jobs, or at least drastically change job requirements. But I look forward in another direction, which is not AI directly, but augmented AI, which means that the people will have to adopt new skills, and then with these new skills, with new competencies, they will be able to make the tasks even better, even faster. So this augmentation is, in my view, the right principle, the right direction to put an effort on.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I would say I would add, right. I agree that physical actions, right, need to be done by robots, right? And but as long as it's not physical, but still, so basically the vision would be more like repetitive work, right? Repetitive, simple work, which can be either mental or physical, right? So this is something. These are the first targets, really, to which will be replaced. And as this research on many spots, right, is showing somehow that the bar will move towards more creative and socially intensive type of work, right? So this will likely stay, right? But this simple, repetitive, manually and tedious work somehow mostly will can get replaced, right? And there's another level, right, which we touched already. This is this complexity, right? As soon as the complexity appears, there, even now, people are not really good there, right, to optimize things. These kind of jobs will be also probably, at least as a helper tool, AI will play a big role there, right?
No, I fully agree. Although I believe that these systems will also potentially open up new positions, as Bojan said very correctly. The question of augmented intelligence, rather than thinking of it as purely autonomous artificial intelligence, I think is the right perspective. And it's very important that we, business leaders, and also policymakers and regulators, take this perspective. Rather than viewing the AI algorithms as a black box that makes decisions, but rather it's a support system for humans to make decisions and to use their judgment. And I'm going to disagree very slightly with something that, Marko, that you said earlier. Common sense is going to be incredibly disruptive once it reaches artificial intelligence. But I think that even 10 or 15 years is an incredibly optimistic a projection of when we're going to have common sense and good judgment in the machines. And that's going to be the place for human beings. We need, we researchers and innovators need to design and develop AI algorithms that work well with people, and we need to train people to work well with the algorithms so that we actually have this augmented intelligence. In the area of complex systems, where we have where the AI systems can help us to deal with systems that are so complex that no one human brain can really encompass them. The question is, how can we have the AI systems dealing with the complexity, but the human beings dealing with the good judgment to know what the right goals are and how to adjust those goals as needed? That's where the human factor comes in very essentially.
Okay.
I can agree with this estimate. Yeah, it was optimistic, this 10, 15 years, what I said before as common sense. It's true that it's quite some investment now. It's a big push, right? Although, I was involved with this psych company, which probably you know, right, from Austin, which promised this already in 80s, right? But sort of didn't succeed yet. But it's true that now it's a really big push from all sides, and there are elements of this, but this proper common sense, it's still far away. It's still far away.
Okay, so we're looking forward to this augmented intelligence, and that we will be doing more or less more creative jobs and more, let's say, intellectually challenging, rather than the repetitive processes. But to get there, we still need this transition. And according to OECD indicators regarding the AI, there's growing demand for AI-related skills across several sectors, and some countries can address this demand with growing AI skills penetration better, and some, for example, Slovenia, are lagging behind by, let's say, multiple factors. With the labor market changing due to the emergence of AI, have we been acting proactively, and are we already educating the new profiles for new jobs? Or will we, the Slovenians, always be a step behind? What's your position on that?
Maybe I can respond, because I was doing these calculations for OECD, right? So there's a little bit of a lack of data, and that numbers are not totally accurate for Slovenia. So based on the way, based on the data which we had, these were the numbers, yeah. But I'm well aware that Slovenia is a little bit underestimated there. This is just to comment this, right? So now, will Slovenia stay behind, or if you still you have another parts of this OECD portal, right, which shows Slovenia is pretty much in the same level as per capita as Germany, France, and these countries per capita, right? In absolute numbers, obviously, we are so small that it's really, we are hardly noticeable. So today, you know, the way how AI evolves, of course. Let me give you an example, right? So I'm sitting now for 8 years at this European Research Council, ERC. This is one of the most prestigious type of research grants you can get in Europe, right? And in the past years, like maybe 6 years and so on, there was a lot of projects which we approved, which were development of AI, machine learning, and so on. Now this kind of disappeared in computer science. Why it disappeared, right? So there's hardly any project which would actually invest into AI itself, but every other project has AI as a tool, right? This is an interesting observation, which I have only one explanation, that this huge investment of big tech companies, right, like Google, Facebook, right, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, right, this five at least, providing these tools for free, right? So everybody seems like quite happy with these tools, and all these very prestigious individual grants, like a few million, are using these tools, right? And these few proposals which we get, which would like to improve maybe some parts of algorithm, machine learning algorithm, simply they don't get funding because they don't have proper framework in where they could even test and evolve this innovation, right? So this is one interesting observation from ERC grants, right? But basically, you almost cannot get a project without AI these days. Some elements of AI, using AI, right?
Okay, so if we continue, you're talking about the corporations and large enterprises that can use these AI benefits and impacts. But how about small and medium-sized businesses? Are they developing their own AI algorithms actively enough, or are they, let's say, or are they locked into using the large enterprise solutions?
My short answer would be, I think SMEs can either use this, can either define themselves as being locked, right, by using this existing tools, or, you know, AI is not that complicated. They can still develop some of these algorithms by themselves or recreate them. They are not that complex, right? Sometimes, I mean, Shlomo and Bojan would know. I don't know, simple algorithm like perceptron, right, or SVM. These are 10, 20 lines of code which can, you know, which can do a lot of jobs, right, these days. This is not that complicated. You don't need GPUs for every single counting task, right?
I would agree that it is not complex, but probably you need an idea, you need a motivation.
Sure.
And coming from Gartner's research about business intelligence, I would still say that this is quite moderate, let's say on the lower end of usage. So I know that I teach business informatics at the GEA College for entrepreneurs, and I like to advocate for, actually I have a part of my course with the exactly same title, Opportunities and Threats of AI. So at least I want to somehow motivate the future entrepreneurs to think about what are the possibilities, why is this important, what value does it add, and so on.
I think that's very important sort of education there, because I think that Marko, it's absolutely right. Is that technically you can do a lot with very simple tools. The big bottleneck really is understanding the business problem, as we discussed earlier, and how that business problem connects to potential solutions. So, for what will an SVM or a perceptron? For what problems will it be useful? How do you represent the data? What data should you use? What data should you not use? How do you control, you know, your experimental development and so forth? Those are the questions which are sort of at a different level. Some of them more technical, some of them more on the business side, where we need that expertise developed. When we're talking about small and medium-sized businesses, one solution that we certainly have here, and I don't know what the general business ecosystem is in Slovenia from this perspective, is there are data science and artificial intelligence consultancies that they help businesses. They help to understand the business problem of the businesses and how different kinds of technical solutions can help with those. That can help businesses to get into AI and data science solutions. And once they find something, perhaps they build something in-house, and perhaps they still continue using consultancy as the most cost-effective solution.
Okay, yes, completely agree. SMEs, of course, have the access to consulting services that are also available in Slovenia, and also all this spectrum of these methods and approaches in AI that are well documented, and of course, like Marko and Bojan said, that are available to all of us, and everybody can start exploring in that direction. Before we go to the next section, I would like to invite the participants to answer a short poll. Anna Maria, would you kindly display the question? So with this, we would like to check what is the sentiment toward the AI in GEA College students. So what does artificial intelligence mean for your business or organization? So I'm very curious what will the results be? What are the experiences with AI from our participants? And perhaps our panelists can comment on the results when it's published. Okay. I see that questions are popping up in chat, and we will save some of those for later, and some of those we will answer in our already established questionnaire. Questions that we have planned. So has everybody clicked on the poll yet?
Jure, we need a few minutes, maybe a minute or two, so that everybody answers.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, perhaps we can discuss other aspects of AI with our panelists. And Anna Maria, when you're ready, just let me know, and we will check the results.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Well, of course, previously mentioned OECD supply and demand of AI skills data when talking about AI-related competences can show us one picture, and I'm very, very glad that Marko has commented that it's not accurate picture, and there's some underestimation of Slovenia's, let's say, skill penetration. This does not show the overall quality and scale of AI projects implementations in different parts of the world. In your opinion, which countries have been ahead with using AI in their companies, and where are the best AI business solutions made nowadays?
Well, based on these numbers from OECD, so OECD has now. Why I'm involved with OECD, just to explain. So I'm together with OECD. Our institute is building this OECD AI Policy Observatory. So, and we have many data sets, right? So not all are perfect, right? But most of them are pretty good. So just so to comment, not everything at OECD would be wrong. Mostly it's pretty okay. Now, based on everything what we can see from these data, in absolute terms, obviously US and China are ahead. And if you want, EU as a whole as well, right? Followed then by typically UK. So this would be in all the rankings, this would be, so seems like China is a little bit of ahead, possibly, but roughly where US, so US, China, and EU, right? So these are three superpowers, right? And well, if UK would be part of EU, then we would be maybe slightly ahead as well, jointly, right? This is how I see now. It's also true that China really accelerated a lot in the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, right? And they're kind of fresh, and they have huge investments, and they have no particular regulation. And they have, many of these companies have open doors to apply AI for pretty much anything related to privacy, and so they have no barriers really, right? While EU and US, we have some barriers, right? So this would be kind of maybe my quick response to this.
I agree with Marko. I would just like to add, because my Google showed also Canada and Russia as the countries who also compete in this course.
You mean in application, or in deployments, or in development?
In AI race, to put it more generally.
Yeah, which indicator, right? I mean, I can tell you, looking at investments, Russia, it's not existent, right? In scientific publications, it's China a little bit of ahead, kind of overtook US recently, and this is pretty accurate. Europe as a whole is a little bit behind the US. Canada cannot compete. I mean, they are 20 million only, right? So they cannot compete in absolute numbers in academic. So I said investments, publications. Okay, let's stay with these two, right?
I think Canada does very well research-wise on a per capita basis.
Per capita,
in terms of volume, you're not going to get.
Yeah, but per capita, it's per capita would be Singapore. No, Singapore and
Right.
Switzerland.
No
right?
question.
Amazing, per capita.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments. And the poll results are. Most of them are actively researching the possibilities of AI integration within their business. So this is quite a positive result. And what are your thoughts as panelists on this?
I would say, well, people would said that they don't think that AI will affect the business. They should rethink twice, right? So.
And I would add to that the people that are concerned that AI will disrupt their business, as well as the people who don't think AI will change their businesses because AI will, I think the right thing to do is to be proactive and to get ahead and to see how AI can help their business and to disrupt the business themselves.
I'm also glad that the distribution is skewed to the better side of the axis. So they are actively researching. They are not steadily developing, but the direction is correct.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for your comments. But we're talking about mostly SMEs, particularly in Slovenian scale. But trying to be honest, the adequate firepower in terms of AI is reserved for larger enterprises which can collect more data and have massive abundance of processing power to analyze and also to apply AI strategically. And when speaking about companies' long-term strategies, also connected with their corporate cultures and of course capacity to implement AI, are there differences between the US, Asia, and European companies of this size? So we're talking about large enterprises, the ones that are usually cutting edge in AI development.
Yeah, if you define big tech, all big tech companies have AI, right? So I think obviously they're all in US really and China. So Europe doesn't have any significant, except SAP, right? It's a big company which is not really an AI company. So basically initially it was US obviously, and then Chinese copied pretty much any of these businesses on their market. So this is where most of this AI is concentrated. Also, the talent is extremely concentrated in these big tech companies.
Yeah, it's very correct about the talent concentration, but I'd like to question one of the assumptions under this, which is that AI is done necessarily better when it's done at very large scales by big tech companies. A few years ago, the big slogan was big data, and big data isn't necessarily better data. The real question is right data, or using the right data for your problem. And the same thing is true of the scale of AI solutions. The question goes back to what we were discussing a little bit earlier: is do you really understand what you're trying to do, and what the right solutions are for what you're trying to do? And that's a place where actually corporate culture can be a very big influencing factor. So large corporations often can be more rigid, can be less innovative, less agile, and allow for less creativity in the development and deployment of solutions than can smaller and medium-sized businesses. And those businesses don't necessarily need the enormous resources and power that the big tech companies have. To actually accomplish great things within their own fields. that's not to remove the fact that, especially when we talk about the threat of AI deployment, scale does make a difference. And when we talk about privacy threats and so forth, that power does make a very big difference. But in terms of positive impact on the business, you don't necessarily have to be thinking about the big companies as the major players.
Yeah, innovation often comes through SMEs, right? But it's also true that there's research labs of, well, let's say from Google, Microsoft, IBM Watson, right? Amazon as well, Facebook, where they're extremely strong and high quality people. It's true that not everything what happens there actually comes to the product at the end, but also the amount of resources which these people have as researchers is, we as academics outside this, yeah, it's really hard to compete, right? You know.
Yes, and not only private commercial institutions are exploring these possibilities of AI. There are numerous intergovernment initiatives on EU and international level to enhance the AI development, or for example, for business competitiveness in their territory, and also to explore policy areas AI will affect, from transport to education and others. To bring benefits to a wider group of its stakeholders and to society as a whole. IRCAI is the first international research center for AI, which is based in Ljubljana, Slovenia, that will assist UNESCO to generate relevant statistics on AI-related applications and associated technological innovations, and will work on legal, ethical, and social implications of AI through awareness raising and capacity building efforts. What does this mean for Slovenia and Europe in comparison to, let's say, Asia and the US? Will this project, will this institution place the main focus of AI development onto Slovenia? This is foremost the question for Marko, who is deeply involved with IRCAI. So please, can you explain?
Yeah, briefly, right? So IRCAI stands for International Research Center on AI, which is under auspices of UNESCO, right? So this would be the official name. It's really the first one coming from UNESCO or from any of these research international organizations. Yeah, so we attached it was a long process first, from the initial idea to the like formal establishment was like 2.5 years, right? So it was long, boring process, right? Administratively, mainly, right? Now, okay, we have it, right? So we attached, and this was also UNESCO asked us to do this. We attached this institute to the existing Jozef Stefan Institute, which is much bigger, right? 1,000 people. And in a way, this IRCAI, right, is a new face which Slovenian AI has. And through this channel of IRCAI, we have access to many more spots in the world, especially in the third world, right, as we would have before. This doesn't mean by itself that now financially that this IRCAI is strong. It's not yet, right? But certainly we can reach certain points which were not reachable before. The agenda is to focus on this, let's call this some kind of good AI, right? Maybe a little bit more specific along this United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, so SDGs, right? And in our agenda, we have several things to do, but I mean, I would prefer somehow that this would move towards actual high socially impactful projects and solutions, right, with the help of others. So this is roughly where this IRCAI stands. Yeah, and we will try to be operational, because today it's, you know, because of this AI hype, it's very easy to get into this trap of endlessly talking about AI and ethics and all these fears and not doing anything seriously, right? So people certainly will avoid this trap.
Maybe I would like to add just one short sentence that I'm glad that this center actually come here in Ljubljana, because Ljubljana and Slovenia, we have a long tradition in AI science and applications. So I believe this is one of the good points, one of the deliverables of the past. And I think that this is a good prospect also for the future.
Okay, thank you. Time is running a bit short, so we will have to push a bit further. And before we reach the Q&A section and to answer a question or two, well, AI could prove to be one of the most important tools of the humanity. As all the technologies, AI is not neutral. Apart from unforeseen impact, it depends on its creators and developers' goals and circumstances. And talking in general, without too much concern regarding the established divisions in, let's say, social class, countries, business or national actors type and scale, who will benefit from AI the most?
I would, yeah, it's not sure if it's one single simple answer, right? This.
Perhaps I should rephrase it. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is the AI winner takes all game? Can there be only one winner, the one that defines standard laws and rules that govern this, let's say, first era in this emerging field? If we think about the internet, I mean, involvement of the US from the 1969 onward, regardless of the British guy in Switzerland inventing the World Wide Web, but all the effort that was put in by the US and the US government, I mean, the internet is more or less structured to the American, let's say, idea. Will AI be more or less the same game? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that AI is a fundamentally different thing than the internet, because the internet is sort of it's a thing, rather than AI is a set of methods and techniques, research methodologies, and so forth, which is by its nature far more distributed. I think that the question, the concern about AI in terms of who will benefit, is AI, like all technologies that increase the power and the reach of human beings, has a tendency on its own to winner take all kinds of dynamics, where the rich get richer and perforce the poor may get poorer. And that's where the role of public policy and regulation comes in. It has to be done carefully, of course, because if you distort markets, you can create even worse outcomes. So it has to be done carefully. But that's where the role of public policy and regulation, wise public policy and regulation, would come in to ensure that the benefits are more evenly distributed, that innovation from the bottom is still possible, that large companies can still be disrupted, that monopolies are not created, whether in one way or another. I think those are the questions. I don't have any answers, but I think those are the questions that need to be asked.
Okay,
maybe if I can add some, I would like to be more provocative here, because if you read Aristotle 2000 years ago, actually in his Ethics, described the principal intellectual and moral virtues of a man. Virtues and vices, actually, but more virtues. And he enumerated 11 moral virtues and 5 intellectual virtues. And what I would like to stress here is that from AI, mostly who will benefit is our intellectual virtues. What I'm expecting in the future, actually, to also maybe to broaden the scope of AI, also to improve our moral virtues. Okay.
Thank you. Very interesting. And throughout all these questions, I think we more or less answered also the Q&A section questions that have emerged on the chat. Perhaps we can do just let's say a short recap. What would be a lesson for our participants, and then we can finish on time. Perhaps just an idea. What will AI never be able to do?
Yeah, I'm constantly exposed to this question and never really know the proper answer. AI is still a machine, right? So, AI systems see the world in a different way as humans, right? The values, we can of course transfer the value system from humans into machines, but this is not the same because we live in a different, let's say, context and infrastructure, so to say, as machines. And as long as AI systems will stay machines, they will act as a machines, right? So there's no good reason for machines to have emotions, or they can simulate emotions, right? But they're not. So the value system, right? Why we are here, right? So this kind of questions. Machines are clear why they are here, at least for now. Seems like to help humans, right? Humans are, I guess, here for different reasons, right? So I think AI systems will stay for at least our lifetimes, our helpers, right? For good or bad, right? But our helpers.
I very much agree, and I think also to bring in Aristotle as well. I think that's in his ethics, he focuses on the notion of self-flourishing. The question is, what makes a human being flourish and become the best version of themselves that they can be? A machine has no concept of that, has no ability of self-flourishing. It is by its nature a servant. And I think the big danger in that, in AI, is that when we treat the servants as the masters, when we believe that, and because an algorithm gave us an answer, that there is therefore an objective evaluation, judgment, determination, and we let the servant be the master, that's where the danger comes in. And I think that's, I think one has to be very cautious in saying that we will never accomplish any particular kind of goal, because the history is littered with people who made those predictions, and those predictions are now dead by the wayside. But it's going to be a very, very long time before artificially intelligent machines are going to be full collaborators with us rather than servants, and in terms of augmenting our intelligence, rather than either cooperating at full equality or even replacing us.
And those are very interesting points. Bojan, do you have anything to add?
Well, is this a final comment, or you
Let's say that it is.
Okay. Well, no, just I'm happy with the discussion. I'm quite happy that we opened a lot of questions and maybe successfully answered a few of them. But at the end, I will, as not really mathematician, but a computer scientist, I will try to end with the theorem. And the theorem states that there are only two rules for success in almost any area of human endeavor. And the first rule is never to reveal everything you know.
Great. So who will ask about the second one? Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks to all the panelists. This was very interesting exploration of this exciting field. And of course, special thanks to Ana Maria Meglic from GEA College for organizing this event. So Ana Maria, do you perhaps want to say something to us?
Yes, absolutely. I'm always eager to send something after such an inspiring and interesting webinar. And of course, the privilege is definitely ours. So on behalf of GEA College, thank you so much, Shlomo. Thank you, Bojan. Thank you, Marko, for taking the time and joining us here. It was really an inspiring conversation. And thank you also, Jure, for leading this panel so well. And thanks goes to all the participants. And I hope that you got great ideas and motivation to work and include AI into your own businesses and organizations that will aspire you to grow more in the future in this new reality. So again, thank you for a great and interesting hour. And of course, I would like to invite you all today here to join us for our next webinar. So next week, we're going to talk about youth engagement and active citizenship. So we're going to a little bit more different dimension, but nevertheless, all those are the topics that need to be covered in this new reality. So we will see each other again next week, same time, same place. And I'm looking forward to see you again. And of course, thank you again for joining us. And as we always say, good night, Slovenia, and goodbye, America. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
and
you.
goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.